Welcome to the November 15th meeting of the Planning Board. First, we'll take a roll call to introduce board members and staff. Josh.
Here.
Phil.
I'm here.
Kate.
Here.
Ellen.
Here.
Okay, and I'm Chris Paff. This meeting will be recorded by Westwood Media Center and broadcast live on local cable television, Comcast Channel 12 and Verizon Channel 42. Meetings are also live on the Westwood Media Center's YouTube channel. If you're interested in joining the meeting via Zoom, you can find the login directions on the Planning Board meeting notice that's posted to the calendar section of the town's webpage at www.townhall.westwood.ma.us. We'll begin the meeting with only the board members and staff unmuted and on video. As the chair recognizes individuals to speak, we'll unmute them. Board members may choose to mute themselves when they're not speaking in order to minimize background noise. For applications, the chair will first invite the applicant to address the board to give a presentation summarizing what is being requested. Board members receive the application materials prior to the meeting and will have reviewed them. Board members may ask questions during and following the presentation. Staff and outside experts will provide comments to the board. If the issue includes a public hearing, the board will then proceed to public comment portion of the public hearing and will restate the instructions. In this remote meeting format, residents and guests may participate in several ways. Attendees should raise their hand and wait to be unmuted and recognized to speak over the Zoom meeting application or from a telephone dial-up. We'll be able to hear you but not see you. Additionally, comments may be submitted by email or regular mail prior to the meeting. When we come to that part of the meeting, I will remind everyone of the process. Following the public comment portion, the board will deliberate and make a decision on or continue the hearing to a specific future date. All remote meetings require that votes may be taken by roll call. When a motion and a second has been made, the chair will ask if there's any further discussion before proceeding to a roll call vote, and will then restate the results of the vote. Nora, do we have any changes to tonight's agenda?
You're on mute.
I'm on mute.
Thank
No,
you.
Nora
That was
is.
me. Sorry about that. So nothing.
I just read all
nothing,
that on mute.
no changes since the change that was made last Thursday to the first agenda item to request a continuance. So that item is 26 Dartmouth Street for 24M. They were before you last month and they started their public hearing. It was continued till tonight. They've asked for further continuance until December 13th.
Okay, so that moves us to number 2, which is
Well, so
No?
for that, I would need you to.
We need a
actually
vote.
make
Sorry.
motion to
All right.
continue.
Continue. Sorry. I will take a motion to continue.
I don't
moved-
suppose I was going to say, do we get to just say tonight? Can we just say so moved? No. right?
Well, I should.
ahead,
I
Phil.
would have had to word that differently if that was the case.
Go ahead, Phil. Sorry.
Okay, I'll do it. I hereby move that the planning board continue the public hearing for the flexible multi-use overlay District 1 FMUOD special permit application for a 24M lithium ion battery research and development facility at 26 Dartmouth Street to Tuesday, December 13, 2022. Uh-oh, I lost it.
Oh, sorry. That was my
Okay.
fault. Let me
Right in
bring
the
it
middle.
back. Sorry about that.
So close.
Sorry
It's
about
almost
that.
there too.
Go ahead.
Okay, 2022 at 7 p.m. via Zoom, where a Zoom link and associated call-in numbers will be provided on the town's calendar at the homepage at https://www.townhall.westwood.ma.us/.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Ellen.
Aye.
Kate.
Aye.
Josh.
Aye.
Phil.
Aye.
And I vote aye also.
Great. Now you can take up the second item.
Okay. Second item is this pronounced pliables.
Yes, Fireballs. And I'm bringing over the applicant to make a presentation.
Hello.
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 How's it going? I was wondering if you'd be
Good.
able to also let in my business partner, Hung Lam. He should also be on the line.
Sure. Yes, I will let him in as well.
That would be great. There he is. All right, I could get started while he's joining. I guess, do you just want me to introduce what we're doing? And okay.
Yeah, please.
So I'm Dana Nenton. I'm one of the local owners of Playa Bowls. We are moving into 745 High Street, which was originally a real estate office, and we will be converting that to an ice cream parlor. Because of the change of use, we will be requiring 2 additional parking spaces, which is, I guess, also part of this discussion, which our landlord owns a shared building next door and has agreed to allocate those 2 spaces to us as well. Do you want me to give a little bit of background about what Playa Bowls is, or is that good?
Sure. A brief, if you like, just a brief one.
Yeah, absolutely. So Playa Bowls was originally started in 2014 down at the Jersey Shore, and primarily sells frozen, essentially sorbet-based smoothie bowls. That's our primary product. It's superfruit bowls, and they're very fresh, healthy, refreshing, and we're really excited to bring it to Westwood.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Nora, any other color you can offer to us?
So this is a change of use, which would ordinarily be just approved as administrative EIDR approval. However, because they require, because the business that was there before had a lesser parking requirement than this business would have, it has to come before the planning board to consider a waiver of the joint parking requirements. There was a similar waiver that was granted, I believe it was in 2015. I have to look back to see, for Arch Orthodontics. And at that time, the property owner offered spaces in a property that's adjacent to this, that the same property owner owns at 54 Hartford Street. There's an office building there that has more than sufficient parking to cover the needs of the office, and often has, always has some open spaces, often has most of the spaces open there. And so those additional spaces are available for overflow if you feel it's needed.
And so that is close enough. I know Arch is on one end. It's close enough to be considered ample parking, or
well, the way it
parking?
would work is the parking is for the plaza as a whole. So there's parking in front of the storefronts as well as on the side and behind. And all of the parking is shared. There's not designated spaces anywhere. So if this business caused additional demand for parking, those customers could park anywhere in the lot or on that adjacent lot. And that would be the same with Camellas, with Arch Orthodontics, with the barbershop. Whoever is going anywhere in that plaza can park in any of the spaces.
And do we have an issue with like peak times for all businesses here? Like they're all looking at lunch crunch time or dinner, or I mean, they're serving food. So do we have an issue overlap there?
I think the busiest time for Camellas is in the evening, and I think the busiest time for Playa Bowls will be in the afternoon, late morning and afternoon.
Yeah, I would say morning into afternoon. Early afternoon is our busiest.
Okay. And if back in 15, when we agreed that the auxiliary parking, we made some condition about extending a walkway or something, so there's an easier path.
Yes, and that walkway has been created. So if you're in the Stagecoach Plaza parking lot at the rear, to the left of the dumpster, there's a stairway that goes down to 54 Hartford Street. And if you need handicapped access for it, you're going out of one driveway onto the road and into the other one. But I would not see it as a handicapped overflow spot. There are sufficient handicap spaces designated in front of the plaza.
Okay. I've been kind of monopolizing the time here. Any planning board members with questions? Yes, Ellen.
I'm not sure how many employees that the real estate office currently has, but I noticed in the narrative that Playa Bowls would have, potentially up to 6 employees working at any given time, and you have 7 spots allocated to you. So I'm wondering if maybe and I don't know, Nora, can we stipulate that maybe some of the employees have to park in the overflow lot just to make sure? Because I think it's not a stretch to say that the Playa Bowls, I do hope, generates more customer traffic than the real estate office would have done, So I foresee, I'm not necessarily saying, no, I'm not okay with that number of spaces, but I think I would like to see maybe the employees park in the overflow lot so that there isn't any kind of congestion in the main lot, kind of closer to the.
Yeah, so you could make that a requirement. The real estate office the parking needs are calculated differently. Doesn't matter how many employees they have. So they may very well have had 20 employees at that spot, each of which might have brought their own car. But for a real estate office is considered a professional service, and the parking need is only based on the size of the building and nothing else. But they don't take into consideration employees as we do for restaurants and ice cream shops and coffee shops. But you could make that a condition of your approval.
Yeah, and just to quickly chime in there, yeah, we have no problem with that. We've talked to Mr. Salvatore, who's the landlord, and he actually requested that, and it would make sense for us as well, just having our employees, park in the overflow lot to make sure that the customers have prime parking spots.
Perfect. That was really the only concern I had about the parking situation. So thank you.
Awesome.
Great,
Thank you.
thanks. Josh, you had your hand up.
Yeah, 2 questions. The current dumpster capacity, is that going to be sufficient for the amount of waste that you guys are going to be generating as well? Or do you have to look at putting another dumpster over there?
Hung, maybe you want to chime in here, but I believe it's sufficient for relative to our existing trash. We actually work with this landlord at another space and have a similar dumpster situation, and that's been more than sufficient. But Hung, maybe you could comment on that, because I'm not sure of the size.
Yeah, no, of course. So I actually spoke with John Salvatore about it. So he's going to increase it so that they will go there every day, essentially, to pick up the trash. So he's been really great to work with. As Dana said, we have another location where we opened, and then that's hence how we ended up here in Westwood. But if we need to, and there's, we don't allow the overflow, and they've been really good about it, we will just increase our days of pickup.
Great. And actually, just another odd question. I noticed on the plans that there's a kegerator under the counter. Is that for nitro brew coffee or?
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not beer.
Yep.
I saw that too and was wondering.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kate, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I have more of a question probably for Nora and Chris and Ellen, I think too. If memory serves, Cabela's came before us and wanted to add breakfast morning service to what they offered. And if memory serves, we said we wanted a traffic study from them because it's so congested there. And I understand we're maybe not back to where we were pre-COVID, but I'm more than the parking spaces, the impact of morning traffic there is a concern. And I don't recall how we handled it last time. I'd like to understand what we did last time.
So I'd have to look up the approval, but my recollection is that the requirement was for no left turn out of the lot. And if they were going to allow left turns, then there was going to be a sign that would go up that would say no left turns during whatever the hours were, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. or whatever it was. And if they wanted to have the breakfast service without that sign, then they would have to have a traffic study. And they opted not to do either. So no sign went up and they didn't serve breakfast. But I believe that was the what the planning board had required. No left turns out of the lot between 6, I think it was 6 and 9. But I will look right now and see if I can find that decision.
I would just want us to be consistent there.
While we wait for Nora to look, are there any other questions from board members for the applicant? Okay. We'll wait a moment.
I'm not seeing anything in the online file, so it's possible that it was long ago enough that it was a paper file. I don't have a clear memory of that, so I'd have to research that some more to see. And I don't think I can do that remotely.
Okay.
Nora, I have a memory of them going before the select board for an extension of their common victular license. And that's where those requirements were placed, not the planning board. And the concern was rush hour traffic, not traffic in general. And the select board, as my memory is correct, gave them an option to let people exit out the back. They wanted the traffic to go out onto Hartford Street. And then if it wanted to work its way up to High Street and go left, it would do so at the light. That's my memory. And then the concern was the early morning ingoing traffic.
So that makes sense because the change was to change to the menu, which would have been a change to their CV license, their time of service, and it wouldn't have been a change to the use. So it would not have triggered planning board review. But that's not, the planning board could have the same concerns and could establish the same requirements that you do not allow traffic to turn left into busy rush hour traffic during the morning hours.
Yeah, so I just want to be perfectly clear. I want to be consistent to the business owners. They're in the exact, they're in the same plaza. And I rely on Camellas to provide food for my family, and I expect to go to Playa Bowls and have them supply food for my family. I want everybody to be safe when that happens and for it to work well for everyone. So I'd just like us to be consistent.
Sure. And just one comment to that is what our hours are 8 o'clock in the morning till 9. So I know 8 o'clock we'll touch on, that busy traffic, but we're not like 6 a.m. or anything like that. But we're more than happy to accommodate whatever you think is best.
I would echo the traffic concerns, just especially during rush hour. I think that when Kate brought that up, I was going to join in on that exact same point. Do you have any sense in terms of traffic? What's the pattern? Is it, if you open at 8, is that a high, traffic time or no? Or what's the sense of your operations?
Yeah, so it basically ramps up and down. Our busiest time is really between 10 and 2 or 11 and 1. It's literally like a peak. Like this. So, and we'll open with only 3 employees. It's usually our slowest, but it ramps up and then comes back down, in the afternoon. So really, I would say 10 to 2 or 11 to 1, sort of in that around lunchtime is our busiest.
I would think the restrictions would just be right around the rush hour morning, and then possibly if you're open till 9 p.m., it could also be during the evening.
During the evening, the traffic would be going the other way, and making a right
Right.
turn is not problematic. So it's really that left turn going across traffic into already stopped traffic.
Right.
So are we getting the sense we want to add this as a condition or something to talk about more as a board collectively?
I mean, unless you get, I'd love to see what the rest of the board thinks. Am I being overly dramatic to say I'd like, especially with fewer parking spots, more foot traffic, more car traffic in a congested area at a time of day that it doesn't currently have it, right across the street from Starbucks, and this is not a good representation of how traffic will be forever, right? We're still a little bit in people working remote. Do we require a sign that says no left turn, 7:30 to 9:30?
And are there other businesses there, Nora, that we would be affecting with a sign like that? That are open for business?
Orthodontics has some early morning customers, and I imagine the barber shop does as well. But neither are significant traffic. It's a matter of, maybe 2 or 3 cars at most for each of those businesses at any one time.
Isn't there a nail salon also separated in that uses that parking lot?
Yes, there is. I don't know that they have early hours.
Okay, I'm just wondering.
Not that I've noticed, but
okay.
I think their early hours are on weekends, which are not problematic.
Right. I guess I'd ask the applicant, is that a concern if we made that a condition?
I don't believe so. I don't know, Hung, do you have any other feedback on that?
No, I don't have any concerns. And once again, I think our busiest hours is usually at lunch. In the morning, we do get some business. The majority of it would be like our oatmeal product, but we're not super busy in the morning, so it doesn't affect us, I don't think.
Yeah. Is there anything? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I guess my only question would be from like a permitting perspective or the use perspective. Is that something that we would need to install, or do we have to apply for a different permit to do that? Or
so you would have to work with the property owner, and the property owner would have to install them, but they would be private signs placed on private property, so there'd be no other permitting needed.
Got it.
Perfect.
So just to be clear, the content of the sign should read no left turn Monday through Friday, 6 to 9 or 7 to 9. But
I would go with like
the
9:30 the way Kate had suggested.
7:30 to 9:30 or 7:30 to 9 even? I don't want to be.
I don't know. Are 30s difficult? I mean, is it for people driving?
If you're going to do that, I'd recommend 7, because part of the problem is the school traffic, and the high school traffic is at 7 a.m.
Yep.
Or it is now. The hours may change.
Yeah.
And if they're not open till 8 anyway, that part really doesn't matter.
Great. So 7 to 9, does that seem reasonable? Great.
Seems logical.
I'd agree with that.
After 9, we're done with the traffic period.
I'd agree with that.
And I think Monday through Friday is a distinction that Nora brought up, and it seems to make sense.
Agree.
From a commute perspective.
So just a question, I mean, more holistically, and it's outside of this exact applicant, but like across the street is Starbucks, and I drive on 109 every morning at that exact time. And there's plenty of people who are trying to take lefts out of Starbucks that block the traffic going eastbound as well, that contribute to that traffic. So conceptually in the future, we would put those same stipulations on other businesses that would come before us. Is that like the feeling in terms of traffic calming, especially in this area, that like we are as a board sort of pushing towards?
I would certainly be bringing it up.
Okay.
As a board member. And Chris, I'm sorry that I jumped.
No, it's okay. No, I was just trying to understand. So Josh, you're saying coming out of Starbucks, and I believe there's only one exit out of Starbucks.
Yep.
As they're trying to take a left in the morning, they're crossing a stagnant line of traffic, trying to get into what presumably is an empty lane of travel, going westbound in the morning on 109.
Quite often it's not empty though. That's the only thing, just as an observation.
But that's what we're for. If it's quite empty, often not empty, that's what we're forcing this traffic to go into. Yep. It's just crossing that stop line of traffic that creates a problem, backing up cars into Starbucks parking lot, not so much the road, but or is it continuing to block traffic as they try to enter that westbound 109? Yep. Okay.
Just an observation, anecdotal again, not sorry to waste your time from Playa.
No, I think it's important they know the neighborhood that they're moving into and what's there.
Yeah, no, of course. not wasting that time.
Would you like to see draft criteria or draft motion and conditions?
I think we're there, yeah. Unless there's further question or comment. I did see 2 questions in the queue, but I deemed them as not relevant to this discussion. And I don't see any longer anymore.
So I move that the planning board grant environmental impact and design review EIDR approval for the Playa Bowls application for environmental impact and design review EIDR approval as described in the application, therefore submitted to the planning board and filed in the office of the town clerk on, do I have this date?
Oh, I'm sorry, you don't. I'm sorry. Let me give it to you. Sorry. In the meantime, do you want to ask if there are any other
Oh, sorry.
questions or comments before we continue with the motion?
Sorry, yeah, I guess
The
we
motion
could.
is-
We do have some attendees. I don't see any hands raised, but I did neglect to offer that to them. So we'll give a moment while you're looking up that date.
Yes, so I'm so sorry. Yeah, hold on
All
one
right.
second.
I'm not seeing anything as far as a hand raise or a question entered from our attendees.
Sorry, the system's a little slow.
Well, while we sit in awkward silence, I'll just chime in with my editorial comment that I agree with Kate that it is important that we be consistent in general, but particularly with tenants of the same block. I think that's a really excellent point. And I'm glad that we had that conversation because I do think it's important. And also to Josh's point, overall traffic on 109, particularly during the 2 commutes, is hairy. So I'm appreciative that we are thinking about that because obviously we're excited about having a new business on that stretch, but I think it's good that we're having these conversations about how to not exacerbate an existing problem, and potentially find ways to try and alleviate it a little bit. So I'm supportive of adding the sign as we talked about, and just looking at these things with each application that comes before us.
All right, sorry about that. The date was October 22nd.
Great, thank you. And filed in the office of the town clerk on October 22nd, 2022, subject to the following conditions. 1, except as modified by the conditions and findings hereof, the project shall comply with the project plans and with conditions of all prior approvals in all respects, and the applicant shall pursue completion of the project with reasonable diligence and continuity. 2, all dumpsters and recycling bins from Playa Bowl and all other businesses. Can you move your cursor for me?
Yes.
Sorry, thank you. And all of the businesses of the property shall be contained within the dumpster enclosure and shall have integral impermeable lids or covers. The dumpster enclosure shall be repaired or replaced as necessary to achieve the screening requirements set forth in section 6.3 of the zoning bylaw. Gates to the dumpster enclosure shall be closed and fastened at all times other than when active loading or unloading of dumpsters is taking place. 3, if the existing dumpsters and recycling bins are found not to be sufficient, the frequency of trash and recycling removal shall be increased or an additional dumpster shall be installed within the existing enclosure or the enclosure expanded in accordance with revised plans which have been reviewed and approved by the town planner. 4, the applicant shall install signs at all driveways leading to High Street stating no left turn Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. 5, the applicant shall ensure that all employees of Playa Bowls park in the overflow parking spaces at 54 Hartford Street. Could you scroll for me? Thank you. 6, the shared parking arrangement between 719, 721 to 745 High Street and 54 Hartford Street shall exist as long as the properties are held in common ownership. Prior to the sale of either property to a separate entity, an easement shall be granted to allow for the shared parking to continue, and said easement shall be recorded at the Norfolk Registry of Deeds. 7, if the project, thank you, or any condition imposed in this decision requires permit, license, or other approval from any board or commission or any agency of the town of Westwood or other regulatory agency of the Commonwealth or the federal government, the applicant shall make an appropriate application for the same and shall obtain all required approvals prior to the start of any work. If any condition of such permit, license, or other approval from any other board, committee, or agency is inconsistent with this decision, the applicant shall make application to the planning board for an amendment of this decision, and the planning board shall consider such application in accordance with the requirements of MGL Chapter 40A, Section 9, and all applicable board rules and regulations. 8. Any alterations, modifications, deletions, or changes to the EIDR approval shall be requested in writing to the town planner and building commissioner prior to the implementation. Proposed alterations, which are considered to be de minimis by the building commissioner, may be accepted as a note to the file. Proposed alterations, which are considered minor by the building commissioner pursuant to Section 7.3 of the zoning bylaw, shall be considered through the filing of an administrative EIDR application pursuant to Section 7.3.6 of the zoning bylaw, or through the filing of an application of minor modification of EIDR approval for review by the planning board at a publicly posted planning board meeting. Proposed alterations which are determined to be major by the building commissioner or by the planning board shall be considered by the planning board as a formal amendment to the EIDR approval and will require a new public hearing before the planning board. Oh, great. Almost there. 9, a copy of the decision and the project plans shall be kept on the project site at all times during construction. 10, this EIDR approval shall lapse if a substantial use thereof or construction thereunder has not begun except for good cause within 2 years following the grant thereof. The planning board may extend such approval for good cause upon the written request of the applicant. In the case of this approval, the term substantial use thereof or construction thereunder shall mean the commencement and substantial continued progress of the approved activity.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. Phil?
Aye.
Josh?
Aye.
Ellen?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
And I vote aye also.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We
Thank
need
you,
a motion
guys.
to, thank you.
Thank
Good luck.
Thank you.
Everyone. Excited to be in Westwood.
Thanks.
Excited to have you. Now just a motion to close the hearing?
Close the hearing. Yep.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion on closing this hearing? Good. Take a roll call vote. Kate?
Aye.
Josh?
Aye.
Ellen?
Aye.
Phil?
Aye.
And I vote aye. That hearing is closed.
Great, thank you.
Thank
The
you.
next item on your agenda is a presentation of the hazardous mitigation plan. This is an update to a plan that was approved by I believe it was by the fire chief and the DPW director back in 2011. And there's been a steering committee of various staff members, as well as consultants from Beta Group, Emily Slotnick and Emily Farmer. And both Emilys are here tonight to make a presentation.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to share my screen. Some of you, if you're at our public meeting, might have seen this screen before, but I promise it's shortened this time, so have no fear. So like Nora said, my name is Emily Farmer, and I worked pretty closely with the other Emily on this hazard mitigation plan update for the town of Westwood. Today, I'm just going to go over sort of the process that we went through and then the actions that we came up with at the end of this plan, specifically those that related to the planning board. So to begin, a little glance that Nora already mentioned of your local mitigation planning committee. There were a ton of help in helping to gather the data that we needed for this plan. So if you see them around town, and Nora, thank you very much for being there and being a part of that. I want to talk a little bit about, what is hazard mitigation? We define it as any sustained action taking to reduce or eliminate long-term risk to people and property from specifically natural hazards, and especially from the impact of climate change as well. So this can be actions like drainage improvements, educational opportunities, amending your bylaws, things of that nature. And while this is important for planning's sake and for keeping people and property safe, it's also super helpful when it comes to attaining grant funding, disaster declaration funding, and it's also really good for keeping your town and community safe. And so that's why we embark on these plans. Throughout this plan, you might have seen published our survey, our public visioning session. FEMA really likes for planners to reach out to the community during this process and ensure that public comment is incorporated into the plan. So we want to document that we did in fact do that, and that's documented in the plan as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the hazard mitigation planning process that we went through. There are 4 distinct parts, and I'll go through them relatively quickly. The first is risk assessment, and that was the one that required the most heavy lifting, especially from those members of the committee in providing us data. And before we go through the data that we sort of accumulated, it's always good to stop and have a brief interlude to revisit the importance of climate change to this plan. There's no greater systemic threat to the health of our human and natural systems in Massachusetts and anywhere. And so considering climate change in this plan was a fundamental factor that we considered throughout the plan. Luckily, the state of Massachusetts has been pretty innovative with its ideas in climate change. The 2018 state plan, hazard mitigation plan, was one of the first to incorporate climate change. And we start thinking about climate change when we identify the hazards of concern. We did this relatively early on in the planning process, and you can see that these hazards are grouped by how climate change will impact them. So changes in precipitation, for example, will impact flooding and dam failure. And then, of course, we also have 9 non-climate influence hazards like earthquakes that won't generally change because of climate change. And a lot of plans will be grouping these hazards based on how they're impacted by climate change as we move forward. So after we identified our hazards of impact, we then took a look at Westwood itself. What were the critical facilities and community lifelines in town that were at risk? You can see this map on screen lists the critical facilities in Westwood, the new developments and upcoming developments mapped against the FEMA floodplains. So you can see where those intersect. And so we really wanted to ask, what do we predict our suffering to be if we do nothing to mitigate our risk? So currently, as it stands now. We then took a look at the strengths that Westwood has at its disposal. What already exists in the town's repertoire that helps to mitigate the damage of natural hazards. The policy part is huge. So we take into consideration zoning ordinances, stormwater ordinances. We're working on the flood hazard overlay district in Westwood currently. And we wanted to know what tools does Westwood already have at its disposal. So after we've identified what the risks, vulnerabilities, and strengths are in Westwood in the face of these natural hazards, we move on to establish the goals of our actions. And as I talk about them here, you can feel free to read them. These are updated goals from your 2011 plan, updated to incorporate climate change and to change some wording around. And these goals are super important because they're what we base our actions on. And they're also important for those grant opportunities. If you show that Westwood aligns itself with the goals in this plan, then you might be more likely to get grant opportunities that also align with these goals. So now that we've established goals, we've talked about the town, it's time to identify sort of the meat of this plan. What are the actions that we're recommending for Westwood to complete within the next 5 years? So again, a lot of words on the screen. These are our high priority actions. You'll notice the numbers on the side. That's how they're numbered in the plan. And so these green ones that I've highlighted are ones where the planning board is mentioned as sort of a driver for these actions, specifically interacting with these actions. That doesn't mean that the planning board is out of the loop for the rest of the actions in this plan. Of course, we want sort of community-wide participation. But I'll give you a moment to read through these, and feel free as you read through them to ask any questions or anything of that sort as we go. But we'll come back to them as well when we go over questions. The next are our medium priority actions. Similarly, numbered as they are in the plan. The dark green, again, are the actions where the planning board takes a lead driving role. And the lighter green, so number 16, is where the planning board was mentioned sort of as a sub-participant, as a sub-driver of this action. And we also have 2 low priority plans. The first, number 17, is to coordinate with Eversource to protect power lines and infrastructure and reduce incidences of power outages during storm events. That was mainly driven by DPW. And number 2, which is institutionalized hazard mitigation planning implementation into ongoing town operations. And that is incorporating all of the government of Westwood and everybody in the municipality to ensure that the goals and actions in this plan are driven and implemented into everything that the town does moving forward. So we've assessed risk, established goals, identified the projects and actions that will benefit Westwood in the long term, or at least for the next 5 years. Our next steps are to update and maintain the plan, which we just ended doing. So in the next 5 years, 5 years from now, you'll hopefully be going through this process again. And each year until then, you'll be checking in to see how far along on those actions have you gone. Do any of them need to be amended? Are any of them completed or no longer necessary? In sort of the short term here, we actually submitted to NEMA this plan just last week. And so we'll wait for their approval. They might come back with comments that we'll make before they submit it to FEMA for their approval as well. And then we also need local approval. So approval from the select board for local adoption. And the next select board meeting will present there as well. And that is all I have for you. Any questions as I find the videos of everybody?
So just to clarify, in this case, most plans come through the planning board looking for the planning board to adopt the plan. It's a little bit different here. So the last time this was done, it was simply a staff plan by the fire chief, and I think it was the DPW director and perhaps the health director as well. Now the process is a little bit more formalized, and it will go before the select board for adoption and submission to the state. The planning board is given an opportunity to review and consider it, but I don't believe you're required to take any official action on the plan.
No endorsement necessary?
You're welcome to. You're
It would
more
be
than
nice,
welcome
right?
to, yes, to endorse or to vote to recommend select board approval, but you don't actually have to adopt the plan. It's not like your comprehensive plan or open space plan.
Is from a timing perspective, is that something that would have to happen tonight to have carry any weight?
Well, so this has been presented at a public workshop. It's been presented to the Conservation Commission, now to the Planning Board tonight. It'll go to the Select Board on December 5th. If you'd like it to go to the Select Board with your recommendation, then you'd need to vote tonight. You can also have it go to the Select Board, and they can refer back to the Planning Board for your next meeting if that's something you want to do. As Emily mentioned, it's already been sent in draft form to the state for them to take a look at. Usually there are comments or clarifications that are requested, so it's likely to come back again before we have the absolute final approval.
I just had one question. Maybe you said this and I just missed it. They were all numbered, you said, just as in the plan. Was that a order of priority?
No, so the written numbers here, so like this happens to be action number 1. It also happens to be just a medium priority action. We had members of our committee vote on the priority of each of the actions after they were already incorporated into the plan. So these are out of order here, but they are in order in the plan.
Okay. Any other questions by board members? Oh yeah, look at that, hands all over the place. Kate, I see you at the top of the list.
Thank you. Thank you to the Emily's for your work on this. I really appreciate it. Nora, I'm sorry, did we say that the Conservation Commission has seen this and they did vote to recommend it to the select board that they adopted, or no?
So they heard the presentation. Emily, do you recall a vote? I don't think they did. I don't think they took any action. I think they heard
No.
the comments, that they made some suggestions. So there was a discussion back and forth, but I don't think they took a vote to
Yeah.
recommend one way or the other.
I don't
I had-
believe they did either.
Okay, thank you.
Josh, you were next.
I was just wondering about the risk assessment part. Do you have any of that documentation in terms of like not only the actions, but in terms of the actual risks that are most acute that we're most worried about in town?
Yeah, so actually I have the plan available if I escape from my PowerPoint here. So within the plan, we actually document every single hazard. Lots of things are happening here. So for example, we're documenting, what is a nor'easter, A, but also how does it impact town? What is the history of nor'easters and other severe storms in Westwood? What are the main impacts? So, we mentioned from sort of our data gathering that down trees and wires, so power outages and dangerous trees due to heavy winds and snow loads. And so, we want to make sure that our actions are directly relating to the sort of profile of the risk and the vulnerability that we've created here. So I think we do have an action to review municipal snow loads. So.
Emily might pull up the risk assessment table.
Yeah, a heat map or something that might be easy sort of eye test for people.
I know what you're talking about. Sorry, there's a lot of pages. So
yeah, no worries.
Bear with me. Drought, floods, we're almost there.
There we go.
Yeah. So actually, right above us, we have the ranking here.
Mm-hmm.
So we rank everything on the probability of future occurrence, frequency of the hazard event, severity of the hazard event. History is sort of unranked, but if there are a ton of earthquakes in town, we might have a different saying than what we actually had. And then adding those all together, we ranked the overall priority ranking. So from the ranking done by the committee members, hurricanes and winter storms were your highest priority items.
So if you read through, just point of clarification, if you read through the subsequent chapter, they're called the hazard profiles, where we write up a segment on each of those ranking factors. In each of those subsections, we'll finish with a sentence that says, sort of in summary, XYZ is highly likely to occur based on the scale presented above. And so all of this chapter here is summarized in that table that precedes it.
Great. And I guess just one other follow-up question about that. It looks like you start to touch on it in terms of costs to the town. Is there on the other side, recommendations in terms of expenditure from the town where it would help mitigate, some of those actions that you were referencing?
Yeah, so the complete mitigation action table is it's far more detailed than what we put into the slides here, just for the purpose of having slides. But we do provide general estimates of the cost to implement any of these actions. Keep in mind, these are planning level estimates that are generated primarily by discussion with the committee. We don't go so far as to suggest, changes in municipal budgeting or any sort of fiscal best practices for finding this money. We do provide a resources section that lists a number of grants that might be available, but this plan doesn't go further than these recommendations.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, Phil, you have your hand up.
Actually, I was just, Josh touched upon some of it. Is the approval of the state required? And then secondarily, how much coverage are these priorities the same as or similar to the FEMA prioritizations that you've set out these various priorities which we're looking at? Is this consistent with or distinct from, would be my question, of FEMA?
Sure. Emily, I'll take this one.
Yeah,
This
go for it.
is, so state approval is not something that's actually explicitly required. This is a federal requirement. This is a requirement under under FEMA and in some cases under the NFIP. That said, FEMA requirements are administered in Massachusetts through MEMA. And so what MEMA does is they do sort of a first pass review on these plans to make sure that they're complete and that what MEMA will send on to FEMA is going to be accepted as a reasonably complete plan and not be problematic once it gets to FEMA. MEMA, in other words, approves anything that FEMA will approve. And so we get the final approval and really what makes this plan have teeth and be applicable for the town is that FEMA approval, and it's approval pending adoption locally. So even if FEMA says everything looks good, we don't want any revisions, or say they request some revisions and we address those, they'll say, okay, now this plan is approved pending local adoption. A lot of times communities don't recognize that and they don't do the local adoption and the plan is never valid. So that's really, it's a FEMA approval more than as a MEMA approval. MEMA does produce its own statewide hazard mitigation plan every 5 years, and local plans must align with that as far as statewide priorities go. And that's referenced in this plan as a baseline. We have to at least consider all of the hazards in your community that the statewide plan considers. It doesn't mean that all of the statewide hazards are going to be applicable in your community, but that's one of the first processes the committee goes through is referencing that longer list of hazards and discussing what's relevant for your town.
So if we get comments and from FEMA and MEMA, do you come back after you make incorporation or responses to those comments? Do we see you again or not?
You won't see us again. So FEMA comments are, they're sort of like icing on the cake for the most part for someone who's, when you have a consultant that knows how to do these plans and has experience doing them, we're not going to miss a lot of required elements. So depending on who the FEMA reviewer is, if they're new, if they've seen our work before, they will always have recommendations for improvement. And honestly, we'll always take them because it's just ways to improve upon what we're doing and improve upon the product for the client, but they're not substantive. They're not going to change the content, the direction, the actions in your plan. So for our purposes for this contract, we're not presenting to the planning board again, but the final plan that would be presented for adoption, there would be, you could see the paper trail of FEMA's recommendations that'll be in there as an appendix, and you'd have this draft as well as the final product, so you could track what changes were made.
And so the final product could come back to this board for final recommendation, to the select board for final adoption of the plan after the FEMA comments were incorporated.
I guess that was my question. Is there some identification of what the FEMA revisions are as compared to trying to go through this version and trying to do a comparison and figuring that out?
It's not something that we normally do, but it's very easy to track. So what we would do is we would probably provide either an appendix with a summary of changes made, or we'd provide a red line version along with the final version.
When would local adoption likely occur?
Considering that we submitted the plan just over a week ago, I think we want to give MEMA a week or two to do their review, and they'll generally pass it directly to FEMA. FEMA could get back to us in 2 weeks, but it could take a month. And at that point, our turnaround time would be very quick. Within a week, we'd address any FEMA comments, give it another 2 weeks to come back from FEMA. So we're looking at 2 months.
Yeah, okay. All right. I didn't know if we were talking 6 months or how long.
No, they're fairly quick with these plans.
Okay. That's all I have. That's very helpful.
Sure.
All right, thank you. Any other comments from board members, questions?
I guess I do have one follow-up about
Sure.
like, I guess I already know this, but I sort of want to ask it anyways, in terms of like the binding nature of this plan. If we don't make significant process in the hazard mitigation plan after adoption, would FEMA and MEMA look at this as a failure and be not inclined to provide grants? From my gut, it's if we don't have the plan, it's going to really quite preclude them from giving us those grants in the first place, and not so much to have the plan and not really be sort of exceeding that plan, like exceedingly achieving that plan is not a reason for them to preclude funds in the future. So I guess my question is, would sort of not meeting these priorities in the plan really hurt us in the long term? Or
Sure.
is it just sort of aspirational?
Yeah, no, I understand your question. So to clarify, you're correct in that without having this plan, you are not eligible for certain grants that the town is actually pursuing currently, and I think awaiting an award on currently. So it's extremely important to have the plan active, approved, and updated. As far as your question about, is it bad to have actions in here that you might not complete in 5 years? The answer is no. That said, I do advise all of the communities that we work with on these plans to think big, but also think realistically.
Mhm.
So we're not trying to have an action list of 50 actions that, they're pie in the sky, or, realistically, there's no one in town that can get them done. There's no way to pull that money together in the next 5 years, never mind 20. So, we really want them to be actionable, which is true of all the plans we do, I'd say as a planner in general. But it's a pretty deliberate process with the committee to come up with actions that have champions in town and that are realistic and feasible. Not to say that they're all going to be completed. But the way you take advantage of this type of planning process where you have to revisit it in 5 years is to really sort of think about what might we be able to do in 5 years, and then come back 4 years later and say, all right, what did we get done and what didn't, and why didn't those things get done? And let's take a different approach this time. So the committee did a really good job coming up with, I think, again, actionable, reasonable strategies that, while they won't all be implemented, a lot of them can be.
Thanks
Yeah.
for interpreting my ramblings.
No worries.
I just want to add on to that a little bit, is that 10 of our 18 mitigation actions, this was a slide presented at the public meeting, 10 of them are carried on or connected to actions from a previous plan, whether that be the 2011 hazard mitigation plan or your MVP process, things like that. So it's a pretty fluid document in that way.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I guess we could poll the board if we're comfortable with what we have. And again, there's no pressure to do this or not, but
there's no pressure to act tonight. So it is the presentation will be to the select board on December 5th. But as Emily mentioned, the draft plan has already been submitted to MEMA. And I don't expect the select board to do anything at that time other than say that they intend to adopt it upon receipt of final comments from FEMA. So I think you have time. If board members want to take a look, the plan is posted to the town's website under the planning board section. There's a category for hazard mitigation plan. The plan is posted there. There's a video of Emily's presentation to the public workshop. You can look through those, you can take your time and review it in greater detail. And then I can add an item to your agenda for your December 13th meeting to officially recommend the hazard mitigation plan adoption by the select board.
I think that sounds good.
I think that's a great idea.
Can you send that that link?
I will,
To
yes.
make sure everyone has that. Okay.
I'll do that.
And Chris,
All
if
right.
I may, just before we
Yeah.
close, I did just want to say thank you so much to the Emilys for their work on this project and to everybody who participated in the process. I know it's a lot. So,
Yeah.
so I'm just so grateful that you do the kind of work that you do and that Westwood is taking advantage of your know-how.
I second that.
Absolutely.
Very nice. Thank you.
I was
Thank you
curious
all.
where you got that picture on your cover. Next to it, there's a stone wall and rushing water next to a minivan.
Yeah, so that's
Was that
from
actually
your,
Westwood?
that's actually Westwood. It was taken in 2009, and we beta collected that during your municipal vulnerability process in 2019. So it's a 2009 photo, a little bit old, but it is Westwood.
It's
It's
a
a great,
powerful image.
great question though, and we're still accepting other images. We weren't able to gather. We're always looking for more images for the plan. So if anyone has, you know, another cover idea, this one is powerful, but it's a bit dated. Feel free to send along.
Ask people for a picture of Buckmaster this August.
That would work. That would work.
All right,
Okay.
thank you very much.
There are
Thank you
also
very
a
much
bunch
for the
of
presentation.
very beautiful pictures of sunset at Buckmaster that you can find almost universally throughout town.
Sure. So we generally like to put something on the plan cover that does show one of the hazards that we're profiling in there. Sunny day is a bit confusing to open a hazard mitigation plan, but you know, it's up to the town ultimately what we put on there.
Maybe the last page.
I'll look for some blizzard pictures for you.
Very good. Thank
That'd
you.
be great.
Maybe conclude with the Buckmaster sunset. All right. Thank you very much again.
Take care.
Nora, next.
All
on the
right.
list?
So next we have a review of comprehensive plan implementation actions. So this has been on our agenda for the last 2 meetings, but when your meetings went past midnight, it was continued. We last took this up, I think it was at the July meeting, where we went through a list of the implementation actions that involve the planning board, just to get a sense of where we were, what had been accomplished, what was ongoing, and what we hadn't gotten to yet. So I can call that up again if you'd like. We can take a look at that, but I can also tell you that this has been sent out to all of the department heads and all of the boards in town, and they've been asked to update their own individual charts of implementation actions. And so far, I've heard back only from DPW and the fire department, who've both updated theirs, so I can show you their updates. And the select board, I presented to them at their last meeting, and they are now working on updating theirs as well. So if you want to just quickly, I'll run through just touching on the planning board actions that are high priority that we haven't gotten around to yet. So this is how the chart is formulated. Each action has a number, a letter number combination that refers to the element of the plan. So on this page, you see the land use element goals that were related to the planning board. The second column, the action summary, describes what the action is. The next column is lead agency. And in this chart, all of them will involve planning board or planning staff. And then there are check boxes for whether it's ongoing or not. And then if it's short-term, midterm, or long-term, and finally, if it's high priority. So we went through all of them in July. I'd like to just walk you through the ones that are listed as high priority, but we haven't done anything yet. And just for color coding, if it's in that kind of yellow color, that means it's in progress. We've started work on it. If it's in white, we have not started work. If it's in green, we've completed it. Okay, so here we have one, that's a high priority item. Collaborate with the select board for the Deerfield property, and the select board and the planning board are listed as the lead agents. This is shown as a midterm priority, midterm action and a high priority. It is high priority, but there's nothing we can do about this until the school committee determines that the Deerfield school is surplus property. We presume that'll happen sometime after the new Hanlon Deerfield Elementary School is completed. And right now, I believe that's scheduled for completion in February of 2024.
Nora,
Yes.
it may actually be longer than that if they plan to use the Deerfield to stage Sheehan students if they're going
Right.
to work on the Sheehan.
Right. So we're waiting. So we will hear from the school committee when they're ready. And then I'm not sure that the select board is going to necessarily wait until they hear that all's a go. There might be a time before that when they start thinking about it. But the point is, it's listed as the midterm goal, and we're just simply not there yet. So it's too soon to take action. The housing production plan, that was something that was listed as a high priority item. And it was also listed as ongoing. At the time the comprehensive plan was adopted, that was something that the town was working on. That has been completed, submitted to, and approved by the Department of Housing and Community Development. The next high priority item on your list.
Nora, I'm sorry, before we move on, but I actually have a question about the housing production plan.
Yes.
Given that we are at something like 11%, as I recall, after the census, how does that affect the housing production plan? Are we still expected to start working on it, or was that more of a contingency?
So the housing production plan was to set forth our strategy on how we would get to and stay above 10% now and in the future. So the plan is valid and we are following it. We're doing what the plan calls for to attract additional affordable housing, to make sure that the affordable housing that we have, especially the housing owned by the Westwood Affordable Housing Association, was brought onto the SHI, and we're in the process of doing that now. So we're following the plan. But one of the purposes of a housing production plan is to buy the town a couple of years of safe harbor if needed. So we had it approved before this 2020 census results came out. And if we had fallen below 10%, that would have given us that safe harbor for 2 years while we brought on more affordable housing to meet the 10% minimum. We don't need to do that. We're above 10%, but we do still need to continue bringing in affordable housing to stay above 10% in the future. As the next census comes along, we have a little bit of time till 2030 and probably till 2031 before the results are released. However, there's always the concern that there could be an interim adjustment of the population and housing count. So we want to stay 10%, a minimum of 10% of the number of housing units we actually have, not just the number of housing units that were counted in 2020. So that's our goal. That's stated clearly in the housing production plan, and it's a valid plan that we will continue to follow.
Thank you. That's helpful.
So then the next item is CF, Community Facilities number 6. Optimize space for Islington Branch Library and multipurpose gathering space. And this has been completed, luckily, with the opening of Wentworth Hall Community Space. So that one was an ongoing goal at the time the plan was adopted, and it is high priority and has been completed. And the next high priority action is under open space and recreation. It's conservation goal number 3. Partner with the Westwood Land Trust, Conservation Commission, Historical Commission to protect natural features and historic buildings. The lead agencies are the Conservation Commission, the Historical Commission, the Land Trust, and the planning staff. This is listed as a midterm goal and high priority, and this is not something that we've begun any work on. And I think there might be one more high priority. Oh, a couple more. The next one is sustainability and resiliency. Develop a climate action and resiliency plan. This was listed as short-term goal and high priority. And I would say that this is the planning department's highest priority goal and something that we are very anxious to get working on. We've been a little bit behind schedule because we lost our town planner in March and were unsuccessful in hiring a replacement who could take this on. We're still in the hiring process. We have conducted some interviews and we're hopeful that we will soon have a new town planner on board. And once we do, I would, my goal is that within 6 months of the hiring date, the new town planner will undertake the start of a climate action resiliency and sustainability plan, and that plan will then be completed within a year of that date. We will discuss after we get the planner on board, what the process will be, whether we're going to use consultants for a limited portion of it, as we do with the comprehensive plan, whether it'll be all in-house or will it be all done by consultants. But that's something we'll take up soon. This has not been started, but it will be started as soon as we possibly can. The next one, sustainability goal number 2, consider climate change in all town decisions. That's underway. We are doing that now. The lead agents are the town administrator, select board, and all departments. It's an ongoing goal and high priority. The next, sustainability goal number 7, explore zoning amendments for the review of solar special permits. Planning board was the lead agent here. It was a short-term goal and high priority. The planning board proposed and town meeting adopted some changes to the zoning bylaw regarding review of solar special permits. Most of it is now environmental impact design review. I don't believe anything requires I shouldn't say that. Most solar work does not involve a special permit. That was approved by town meeting and is currently under review by the Attorney General's office, and we expect to hear shortly on whether or not that bylaw amendment was approved. The next one, sustainability goal number 8, consider revising zoning incentives for sustainable buildings. Planning board is the lead agent. This is a midterm high priority goal. We discussed this over the summer a little bit, and we've discussed it as a couple of applications have come up, and we will, I would think, discuss it in the next agenda item regarding zoning about whether the board wants to make some zoning amendments that that prioritize sustainability options for site plan review. The next is, sorry, can't quite read that. So strengthen EIDR to promote sustainability. I think these go hand in hand, zoning incentives and zoning requirements. We can take that up when we get to zoning amendments, but no work has been done on that to date. Then sustainability goal 20, pursue green communities grant programs. This is ongoing. It's something that we do. Our energy manager has been extremely successful. So this is a short-term goal with high priority to obtain green community grant funding wherever it's applicable. And in fact, I was just speaking to the energy manager today, and he's already has a grant funds in hand to install a car charging station at Wentworth Hall, something that had always been envisioned, and now he has the funding in hand to place that order. So those are that's the extent of the planning board's goals. You can look through it in greater detail. It's in your meeting packet, and I can also share with you the much shorter additions from the planning board and the fire department. Not the planning board, I'm sorry, the Department of Public Works and the fire department. So I can let you know where they stand on their goals. Let me take up fire department first. So here's fire department. Their first, they actually made some suggestions for some changes. Now the planning board will not undertake changes to the comprehensive plan at this point. I think that the process is usually to review a comprehensive plan between 5 and 7 years after adoption. But I've asked all the departments to give us an idea of what goals, what action items no longer seem relevant or have been not only ones that have been completed or ongoing or haven't been taken up, but things that need to change. So we got some comments back from the fire chief on this. The first one, community facilities goal number 8, was address deficiencies at the fire station 1 for temporary storage. That was listed as a short-term goal, and the fire chief noted that it's going to have to be a long-term goal because none of the storage issues can be addressed until a new fire station is constructed. And that simply is not going to happen within the short-term priority status. The time frame for short-term was within 2 years of adoption of the comprehensive plan. So that time has already passed. So he's asked that this be considered a long-term goal. Community facilities number 9, develop long-range plan for fire station 1 renovation or expansion. Fire chief noted that this is ongoing. The select board and the fire department are the lead agencies, and they have begun planning for a new fire station. There's a pre-designed study that's underway right now. he suggested that this be listed as a midterm goal rather than a long-term goal. So kind of reverse the priority here. The storage can't be completed until the new facility is built, but the planning for the new facility should be moved up to a midterm goal. Then the next one, community facilities number 24, devote staff to website updates and communications. That has been done. It's an ongoing matter to keep, the website updated and communications fresh, but it's something that has been undertaken and there's a process in place. The next couple of items have not been addressed yet. Move on to one here that the fire chief has said is no longer necessary. So this was goal R5, expand the emergency planning committee. The town has joined a regional emergency planning committee, and there's no longer a need to expand it. Next, R6, review the town's emergency operations and communication systems. That's ongoing. The fire chief and the police chief are working not only with Public Works and Health, but also with the select board on options for better communications. R10, improve community engagement skills of health, police, and fire. This is an ongoing item as well. And that's it. That's it for the fire goals. They're clearly far fewer than for the planning board. Now, let me share with you the update we received from the Department of Public Works. All right. Here we have the goal TC10 has been complete. That's annual review of infrastructure and improvements. It's complete to date for this year, but it's ongoing. That's something that will be continuously done year after year. Next is NC7, ensure water quality. Public Works and Conservation are the lead agents. The Public Works Director has asked that this be noted as an ongoing item and moved from midterm to short term. That's something that they are working on now and will continue working on. Natural and Cultural Resources number 26, continue to utilize Westwood Community Trails Program. Recreation, Public Works, and Pedestrian Bicycle Safety Committee are working on this. This is another one that the director asked to consider ongoing. Natural and Cultural Resources number 30, recycling public education campaign. Public Works and WEAC are working on this. There's a recycling coach is on the town's website, and it's continually updated. So again, this is moved to be a continuing item, an ongoing item. Natural and Cultural Resources number 34, sidewalks to be designed with natural environment. The Select Board and Public Works are the lead agencies, and this also is an ongoing item. All sidewalks designs are looked at in this manner and have been for several years, since I think even before the comprehensive plan was adopted. Community Facilities number 18, education and outreach for recycling. Public Works is responsible. That's ongoing through the recycling coach. Community Facilities number 21, implement electronic permitting for all departments. This is the town administrator and all departments that are listed here, and all of our town departments are now on the Viewpoint electronic permitting system that the planning board adopted and building department adopted back in 2017. We now have planning, conservation, zoning, Public Works, fire, licensing are all on this electronic permitting program. Community and Facilities number 24, devote staff to website updates and communications. All of the departments have done that. It was a short-term goal, listed as a midterm goal in the plan, but adopted as a short-term goal. Community Facilities number 26, pursue designs to expand Westwood Cemetery. That is ongoing. The DPW department has plans now to implement the next stage of cemetery expansion. They've asked that be moved from a midterm goal to a short-term goal. Community Facilities number 30, regularly update long-term operation maintenance plans for town facilities. That's Public Works is the lead agent, and our facilities director is doing that now and will continue to do that. So that's ongoing. Open space and recreation. Conservation goal number 5, increase usability and attractiveness of trails. The Public Works Department, with assistance from the Conservation Commission and Recreation Commission, are ongoing, improving the trails on a case-by-case basis as they go through. Recreation goal number 4, implement use and maintenance plans. Recreation and Public Works are working on this for all of the community recreation facilities. Recreation goal number 5, expand outdoor recreation facilities by more multipurpose fields and lighting. Recreation and Public Works are tasked with this goal. It's ongoing. There have been improvements, and I guess there plans to expand the number of fields. When the Hanlon Deerfield project is complete, there will be fields associated with that. I believe there's also some work to reallocate some fields around the middle school and high school. Transportation goal number 1, promote regional transportation. Public Works Select Board and planning staff are all working on this. It's an ongoing goal. Transportation goal number 7, work towards implementing recommendations of the Dedham-Westwood Pedestrian Connection Plan. That's something that is ongoing. We have it listed in the plan as a midterm goal, but it's something that we're working away at. The Select Board, Public Works, and Pedestrian Bicycle Safety Committee are the lead agencies. Transportation 15, pursue adaptive signalization program on Route 109. Public Works is working on this. It's a short-term goal, and it's something that they are working on right now. Transportation goal number 16, review existing traffic calming measures for effectiveness. Public Works is looking at that. So the traffic calming measures along Canton Street, in that neighborhood, along Conant Road, in the neighborhood over here, and then other potential ones in the future. They're looking into those, and they will continue doing that. Transportation goal number 24 is marked as complete. This is established street acceptance policies. The Select Board and Public Works Department has done that. Transportation goal number 32, simplify and expand earth movement bylaw and establish truck routes. This is something the Planning Board and the Public Works discussed, and if you may recall, when the comprehensive plan was first in process, earth material movement was a special permit required from the Zoning Board of Appeals. It was transitioned to a Planning Board Environmental Impact Design Review approval. When we get to our next topic and we discuss potential zoning changes, I'd like to discuss the possibility of further amendments to the earth material movement bylaw. Transportation goal number 33. Incorporate sidewalks, bike lanes, paths, trees in public roadway projects. This is ongoing. It's listed as a long-term goal, but the Public Works Department is working on that now. So for any grant programs that are applied for, especially complete streets programs, all of those aspects are considered in the design of the roadway. And I think that might be it for work that's underway. Oh, one more. This is, I believe, I can't remember, I think it's resiliency goal, complete a process. Resiliency goal 2, complete a process to become a certified MVP community. That's a vulnerability plan. I think Emily had mentioned that that's something that we have been working on. The town has recently adopted a new MVP plan. So Public Works has completed that goal. And then resiliency number 18, conduct semi-annual catch basin cleaning. Public Works is doing that, and they will continue doing that on every 6 months. So it's something they do in the spring and the fall. So that is it for the implementation charts that I've received back from departments or boards. There are many more out there. So I'll update you as it comes in. I think that the planning board, when they adopted the comprehensive plan, they committed to reviewing implementation strategies on an annual basis, and they suggested doing that in the May-June timeframe. So sometime after town meeting and before you get busy preparing for the next town meeting. This year, without a town planner, we kind of fell behind on that. But next spring, we'll be sure to have that on the chart to move forward. In the meantime, if you think of any, if you want to read through those implementation strategies and let me know if there are any goals you would like to prioritize or move up in adopting, but I believe that our highest priority should be the climate action, resilience and sustainability plan.
Okay. I won't ask you to go through that again. It's quite lengthy. And what are the other boards and committees that have not responded with anything? Just
well, so we have, there's the Conservation Commission has some work. There's the other land use boards, the building department, the health department. They still have some goals that they need to take a look at. Recreation has some goals, disability committee, pretty much everybody.
Okay. A lot.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of, everyone has their piece of work to do. The land trust, the Dedham Westwood Water District, everybody has some goals that are in the plan that they're responsible to take action on.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you got your voice back for that one. So, thank you. That was a lot. Any comments or questions from board members for Nora?
Hey, Nora, I thought you had sent out that matrix with the sort of the completed, the highlights that you had sent out. I couldn't find it in my email. I don't know. Would you be able to resend that?
I will resend it. I think it was posted to a meeting packet and it was
maybe
an earlier meeting packet. And it might not have been reposted to this one, but I will send it out.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So Nora, no action items from us tonight?
No,
This was just a
no, that was
recap?
just, yeah, just informational, just to let you know where we stand, that we haven't forgotten about the plan. We're working on it, chipping away little by little.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate the
Oh.
update, Nora. Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, that's very
Very
good. Thank
welcome.
you.
Okay, what's next, Nora?
So next is a discussion of potential zoning amendments. So we also took this up over the summer. I think it was at a July meeting where the board discussed what options they have before them. At the time, we were talking about whether there'd be a fall meeting or not. It was decided there would not be a fall town meeting. So we're working towards zoning amendments or general bylaw amendments to be considered at the May 23 town meeting. And our strategy here would be to have draft amendments ready by late December, early January, and then begin a public hearing process in February. We'd go to the FinCom with our final articles. But the first step is just deciding what the board would like to take on for the May meeting. What proposed zoning amendments you're interested in pursuing at this time.
Any board members have any thoughts on bylaw changes or amendments? Nora, you and I have talked about this in the past. I would like to pursue looking into making the earth material movement an administrative responsibility, whereas we have little to no say over what happens other than the path of trucks that move in and take, haul away, and the hours. It's almost just standard conditions. So I think I would like to discuss that with the board and see if they think the same.
So when earth material movement was first adopted as a special permit before the Zoning Board of Appeals, it was really the only chance to look at the effects of moving earth, changing the grading of property, significantly altering the slopes, and moving dirt across roads. And at that time, the zoning board felt that they were not the appropriate board to do that. So it was transitioned to the planning board and then reduced from a special permit to an environmental impact design review approval. Since that time, the town adopted stormwater management bylaw and stormwater management regulations that look at a portion of the earth materials effects while the planning board is left really with the transportation end of it. Everything else goes before either the Conservation Commission for a stormwater management land use permit for anything that's a greater disturbance of either a half an acre or more. If it's less than a half an acre, but at least 5,000 square feet, then that's picked up as an administrative stormwater approval by the conservation agent. And in all cases, it's looked at from the perspective of erosion control and drainage flow off of the property that's being developed onto surrounding properties. And the planning board piece that's left for you to review is about how the materials, dirt or rocks or whatever is being brought on or off the property, how that's trucked in or trucked out. And often abutters and concerned parties come to the planning board looking for information and input on the erosion control aspects of it or the drainage aspects that are really being handled under the stormwater management approval, either before the Conservation Commission or before the conservation agent. So I think that the earth material movement applications that you're seeing take up an awful lot of time and can be frustrating to the abutters and the interested parties that they are coming here with comments that really just are not within your purview. So I would agree with Chairman Paff that the best thing might be to make it an administrative process. So we still do make sure that those standard conditions are applied and that the correct roadways are chosen for the transportation of the fill, but clearly leave the erosion control, the landscaping aspects of it, and the drainage treatment to the Conservation Commission.
Anyone with thoughts on this particular aspect?
Yeah, I agree. I think it as you've said, people come to these planning board meetings thinking that we can do things that we cannot do. And I think it's confusing and it's very frustrating. So if we can have it where it's most appropriate, I think that's a really good idea.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Sure.
How many times in the past, say, 6 months have you had earth material movement hearings and they've almost morphed into a Conservation Commission issue?
All of them.
I agree.
And you folks work really hard on a number of things, but no matter how hard you work, you're not going to be able to step into the shoes of the Conservation Commission. And you're taking up a lot of meeting time trying to explain that to those parties who have a legitimate interest in some of those issues, but they're just not at the right place. So
I think it's, I'm sorry, I think it's difficult to explain to an abutter that we have no impact on this beyond traffic. And I think it makes us and the town look a little weak, and it makes the abutter extremely frustrated. And this is the only time in our town where the planning board rules on anything with a single family home, I believe. It's the only insight. And when we took this over, the first year and a half were abutters thinking this was my chance to stop this project next to me. And I believe that we've done a really good job educating that that's not what this is, but still, as you've seen in the last 6 months, every earth material movement has come in with some aspect of an abutter asking questions, and valid questions, but to Nora's point, it's a conservation matter. It's not ours. We're not equipped to rule on these things. And I think it just, all in all, just makes us look really ineffective, I think. And, I was thinking about that, our last meeting, we adjourned at 10 minutes after 12. I think we had 3 earth material movements that at least were 20 minutes apiece. I would love that hour back. So from
I
that
would have
night,
liked it back that night, but we're not going to ever get that hour back.
No, I know,
you may get hours in the future, and you have valuable work to do to fill those hours.
And you're not just saving your time, you're saving those abutters and interested parties time, because they only have to go to that one meeting and focus their comments to the board that can actually take action that that incorporates their concerns.
It also takes a lot of time, which should be spent on higher priority items that when we have a crowded calendar, you have to give everybody at least some time on the calendar. And it's almost as if we can't spend because we've got to fill 3 more items or whatever. So I second the other comments.
So
All right, so-
unless there's serious opposition to this, I'd like to pursue, maybe we have time, Nora, for you to draft some language to.
Yes, yeah, I'll draft a bylaw amendment for you to take a look at before your, I'll send it to you before your December 13th meeting, and then the board can discuss whether it's something they want to pursue at that meeting.
And I'm not trying to push this through. These are my thoughts. If someone thinks or sees some unintended consequences from doing this way, please, come say them now or come to the next meeting with those, because we'd like to see around every corner if we can.
So another area for zoning is the EIDR design standards that promote sustainability. And I read there was one of the goals, 2 of the goals, I think, in the comprehensive plan implementation action was to strengthen those requirements. And I know that's come up with several recent applications where the board would like some members of the board would like some greater incentives to require more sustainable actions in new development. So if the board's interested, I'd be happy to take a look at some options to see what some other towns might do for sustainability requirements instead of just encouraging them, make them requirements or provide incentives that lead to us seeing more sustainable building.
Okay, thanks. Josh.
Yeah, Nora, I'm strongly supportive of that. I think I even sent over some ideas of what Cambridge, for instance, does for some of their commercial building requirements for new developments. And I would be fully supportive of something like that in both the terms of their requirements as well as like either bonus density or whatever other sort of alleviations from some requirements that we put in other areas to sort of, like you said, incentivize that. So whatever I can do to help with that or help champion that, I'm more than supportive.
Yeah, I would be very interested to see other approaches and would welcome the opportunity to, see what's out there and then for us to consider that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good approach. Ellen, do you have something?
Just want to echo that I am 100% behind adding requirements. I think incentives are good, but it's within our purview to add requirements, and I'm not afraid to do that. And particularly since we've just had a lovely presentation on hazard mitigation, I think it's imperative that we do what we can to support those efforts and requiring more sustainable building practices, materials, et cetera, is something that we should be looking at now. So I am 100% in favor of bringing something forward to town meeting.
Great.
Just to circle back on that too, Nora, my proposal to you was sort of a tiered approach. Is that something that feels good, based off of certain levels of development in terms of the size of the development, sort of triggering additional sustainability measures? Does that feel good to both you and, I guess, in the blind to the rest of the planning board?
I think that's a reasonable approach because the larger projects have greater funding and greater ability to undertake sustainability improvements, and some of the smaller ones simply don't have the same opportunities.
And conversely, a greater impact. That's also part of the thing that I thought was fair, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'd be interested. I'd like to see that approach, but I'd also, I guess, from my perspective, I'd like to be educated on the different approaches before we kind of lock in the tiered approach may be the best one to follow. I just it's starting down a process, and I'd like to see the different options before we then lock in a particular approach that might be the best.
So Nora, can you, looking at the calendar, help the board understand how many more meetings we have prior to us having to lock down what we're going to present first to the Finance and Warrant Commission?
Yes.
I think it's important that we not bite off more than we can chew.
So your next meeting is on December 13th, and my goal would be to have very preliminary drafts of those two articles. And then if there's any other articles you'd like to work on, I'll do my best to get those done. It would be difficult without a planner to do more than two, but if there's something that's important to the board, I'm happy to try to tackle it. So December 13th would be your very first preliminary draft review. I would take your comments there, and then you'd meet again on January 3rd. And we would need to at least know what direction we were going to in by January 3rd. Still time to massage the words, but we need to know that we're moving towards a number of articles and general tone of the articles. And then there's a meeting before the Finance and Warrant Commission on January 17th. That's the Finance and Warrant Commission's article sponsors meeting. So by January 17th, FinCom wants us to report to them what the planning board is thinking of bringing forward. You don't need final language at that point. It's not a hearing. It's just an introduction to get them ready for what they'll need to review. And then after the 17th, we have a meeting on January 24th. Now at that meeting, we would want to approve language to be posted in a legal notice for advertisement. Again, it doesn't mean the language can't change. After we hold a hearing, you expect the warrant articles, the zoning by the language in the warrant articles to change in response to comments at the hearing, but we at least need the language to be clear enough for the hearing notice to let people know what they're coming to the hearing to discuss. So I would say January 24th is the last date for the planning board to make comments on the substance of the article, not the language, but the substance of the articles that they're proposing. Then we would have a hearing at the February. Let's see, we have a meeting on February 7th. It would be actually the meeting on, I believe, February 28th. I'm sorry, no, February 28th is the FinCom's hearing. Let me go back. Yeah, so it would have to be the February 7th meeting would have to be the start of the planning board's public hearing. And then that could be continued pretty much through February and March as you met with the FinCom to discuss the articles and request their approval, and then moving towards the May 1st town meeting.
So we have basically about 4 meetings for the substance to be ironed out.
Yeah, I'd say probably really 3.
Okay.
So the 2 meetings in January are really the dates when your meeting December 13th is for a first look. January 3rd is for a very substantive discussion, and January 24th, you really need to be in good shape with where you want to go on the articles.
Okay. Ellen.
Yeah, I guess the kind of related to sustainability. Is there anything we can do about contributing or drafting something to address the preserving and replacing the tree canopy? I know that came up as part of the hazard mitigation, but I think the tree canopy, it's integral to a lot of things, right? It helps with stormwater, it helps with offsetting some of the effects of development. And there's a lot of reasons where I feel like that's low-hanging fruit, no pun intended, that could help further a lot of goals, aesthetics as well. But is there anything we could do? Is there any desire to try and do something with that for this next cycle? I mean, there is on my part, but I'm not sure how everyone else feels.
So that is something that's in the comprehensive plan. A tree preservation bylaw is something that the town should be looking into. And I know there are a couple of towns that have it. I know Lexington does, and one of the W towns, I can't remember if it's Wayland, has at least considered it. If they have, I'm not sure if they finally adopted it, but there are examples of tree preservation bylaws. I'm happy to try to add that to look into, but I honestly don't have the bandwidth right now. So depending on how soon we get a new town planner on, I think I could give you a final answer on whether it will be in a form that's ready to go through. But I can do my best to get it teed up, and then the board can take it from there and decide if what is available is something that you're interested in pursuing.
Ellen, is that what you meant when you talked about preserving the tree canopy? I can speak after 8:30. Is that what you meant?
Sort of. I mean, yeah, like I'd like to see if there's something we can do as far as, I don't know what our purview is, like stipulating how many trees or what percentage of the trees on the lot can be removed, and or if you take X, you have to replace Y. Some sort of trade-off, because I see a lot of lots, both commercial and residential, that are just clear cut, and then either nothing goes back or they're replaced with things like Norway maples, which are invasives, which, yeah, it's a tree, but I'd kind of like to see some sort of oversight of what we're planting as well. Like natives are obviously better because invasive species are just not good, particularly
I was
in light
just
of
asking
climate change.
for my knowledge purpose, what you had a vision for, that's all.
Yeah, I think I'd like to see some oversight, not just please don't cut down all your trees, but some specifics like guidelines for tree replacement, because sometimes trees are old, they do have a lifespan, right? I understand sometimes they have to go, but replacing the trees that we cut down to some degree, I think is important, particularly if one of the goals of the comprehensive plan and the hazard mitigation plan is preserving our tree canopy. I'm not sure that there are enough people and, projects in town that have that baked in unless we do something to kind of mandate it.
So I think that could be tackled in two forms. One with a tree preservation bylaw, which is a little bit more involved, that the board can take a look at and may require quite a bit of education to get something like that approved, because very few towns do it. But it has been very successful in Lexington. So that's one approach. Another approach, while we're working on that, is to include tree canopy in the sustainability criteria that we put into the environmental impact design review. Now, that only applies to commercial, industrial, and institutional property. It doesn't apply to residential, but it's just another bite at the apples. And that I'm sure we will have time to do. It's a question of whether we'll have time to have a tree preservation bylaw ready for this town meeting, but I'll do my best to get something started.
Thank you. And
Laura,
if there's anything I can do, if my hands can be helpful, let me know.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I was going to offer the same, Nora, just because I think the tree preservation bylaw would be very helpful, but there's only so much we can demand. We can try to get Nora to be stretched even thinner than what she's at. So whatever help you need, I'm available.
Thank you.
Nora, I know in your research, I know firsthand the town of Weston has a very strict replacement policy.
Okay, great. I'll look into
Very
that.
well articulated.
Thank you.
Kate, you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, thank you. I am very supportive of what we're talking about with pursuing bylaws, and I did want to have a joke question. My joke question is the timing that you gave us for working on the bylaws. Does that include 3 hours of earth material movements discussions in every meeting?
It's going to have to.
Leading up to it, yes.
Until May,
I don't
at
think
least.
I'm going to second Kate on that.
Right? Like, can we just say, listen, why don't we talk about this in June with all of the applicants until then? Be like, in June, you won't even have to talk to us. That's my joke. That was it.
All right. I do see a question from let's see, Fran Fusco. I'd like to know the status on the bylaws from last spring. With respect to commercial, I feel it should be required that all commercial have solar on rooftops. Commercial always receives special privileges with special waivers, special permits, TIFs, etc. So I think she had the bylaws from last spring. Nora, can you speak to those?
Yes, so they were all submitted right after town meeting to the Attorney General's office, and all except for 2 of the bylaws were formally approved by the Attorney General. 2 of them, the Attorney General asked for more time to review. And those 2 are the mixed-use multifamily overlay district and the solar, the changes to the solar facilities approvals. Both of those are still under review, and we expect to hear back from the Attorney General, I think by the end of this month or first week in December.
By the end of the month, I think it is. I think we granted the extension at the end of August and gave them 90 days. So I had, I think November 30th is the day we kind of expect to hear by. And as soon as I get word, I'll let you folks know.
And Nora, the second part of this question is about commercial and solar. But she believes it should be required on rooftops, not just suggested. Right now, we can't require it.
So under the current EIDR requirements, it's sustainability is just a goal. It's something that's encouraged. So we said that we would look at strengthening EIDR requirements surrounding sustainability, and that will be one of the areas we'll take a look at. And I'll provide options to the board, and the board can decide how far it wants to go with that and what they think they should propose to town meeting.
Okay. I think so far that's it for questions from attendees or the public. Any other things? Kate, you still have your hand up.
Yeah, I put it up again. Sorry. I just wanted to say,
No, it's all right.
I just wanted to say thanks to Fran for that comment. I really appreciate that, that she brought it up again.
The question is still showing in there, but it's the same question. I don't know who can clear that out as questions get answered.
I can do that.
Okay. Any other thoughts on zoning bylaw changes or amendments for upcoming town meeting? So just to recap, Nora, we talked about earth material movement, solar, sustainability. Help me out. Sorry.
Tree canopy.
Tree canopy, right. Was there anything else? So those 3. Does that sound right, Nora?
So those are the ones that we've discussed now. I know, Josh, we had also had a conversation about changes to dumpster requirements. Is that something that you think we should take on for this time, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's only so much time to push new bylaws, and we need to prioritize some of these other things. For me, the sustainability bylaw is a big one, and I think although there is sort of a template with other towns, that it will be a hard one to work through. So I think there's not really time to look at things. But I mean, for the rest of the board, I think right now, especially in terms of point source control and stormwater management, we saw some issue associated with one of the commercial dumpsters over by our wellheads. If you remember a couple of meetings ago, I think it would make more sense to push the dumpster regulations in a more expanded fashion into our zoning bylaws, in terms of those expectations of how we're maintaining them, the covers, things like that, and not have it necessarily live just with the DPH, but live as a part of our zoning bylaws so that we have a little bit more oversight. So I think that's something that we could think about in the future, or if it's really an easy lift, potentially. But I wouldn't do this at the detriment of some of the other zoning bylaws that we had mentioned.
So I'll put that as number 4, and if we have time to get something in draft form in time for the board to consider it, we will.
Great.
Josh, may I ask you a question?
Sure.
Would you not see it as a general bylaw, like trash facility maintenance?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I would defer to you guys. I feel that it would make sense in the zoning as well, especially as it pertains to the commercial aspect of it. But I would see this also as a overarching for residential maintenance as well, right? In the past, when I have actually reached out specifically to the DPH about construction dumpsters being left open, materials blowing around and not being well maintained, they've pointed me to the building department, who points me back to the Department of Public Health, and it just doesn't seem to be well sort of established in town. So having it someplace that we can point to, define exactly who's responsible for it, and really sort of crystallizing it, I think wherever that fits best, it makes sense to me.
Okay.
And Nora, sorry, can I just ask, at this point, we are anticipating 2 town meetings next year at this point?
So we're always anticipating them until they get canceled. So I think the way the charter is written currently, there is a annual town meeting in May, and there's a fall town meeting unless the board decides not to have it by September 15th.
Yeah,
So
it's actually a second edition of the annual town meeting in the fall that the select board has to decide by, and it's on a date prescribed in November. I don't remember the exact wording of the bylaw or the provision, but the select board has to decide by September 15th whether or not call for the fall town meeting.
So they have to opt out if they don't want to have it. The default position is that there would be a second annual town meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Nora or Pat, as we're talking about which to take on, it seems that planning board articles are always last at town meeting. And I think we possibly suffer from voter fatigue by the end of town meeting. How is that process determined? How do we get seemingly the last articles of the night?
I believe the order of the articles is set by the moderator in consultation with the town administrator.
And town council. So
lobby Pat.
So I was just going to say, so we have Pat here right now.
I wasn't going to say anything.
You're going to move us up on the queue.
There is some strategic thinking about how it's arranged. I can tell you it's not any slight of or
I understand. I've just noticed, and I think in some cases it helps our articles, but I think it can also be harmful to discussions, but or attendance. We may lose a lot if there's a hot topic article before us and then they leave.
Well, if you recall last year, the last article on the warrant, I believe, was the mixed multifamily. And that wasn't done out of slight. That was done because I think we knew that had the greatest interest and would keep people at town meeting.
Yeah, no, I understand it all goes into the mix. It's just an observation I've made that while it can be strategically helpful, I think there are times when in some articles it may not be, but it was just a topic of conversation, a brief one. We can move on. Sorry.
All right, so I will work on those articles. I'll get you drafts before the December 13th meeting. You can discuss them some more. Hopefully get to the point where you have fairly concrete language at your January 3rd meeting, and then nearly final language at your January 24th meeting. And in the meantime, if board members want to add other articles or change what we're looking at, then we should discuss that further on December 13th.
So please come ready to discuss with thoughts, ideas, and we need to advance this. We don't have all the time we want. We need to be ready to work. Josh, did you have something else to add?
Yeah, actually more of a question for Pat. I was also interested in visiting the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit in thickly settled areas. Does that make more sense in a general bylaw or zoning bylaws, since it's specific usually to thickly settled areas and business districts, and we would as a town, call out specific areas.
Yeah, so the select board are the road commissioners for Westwood. So I think something like that would probably have to, in some way, shape, or form, go through them. That's not saying you can't raise it with them for a discussion, but I think that's where it probably needs to go through. I suspect we could do it a number of different ways as I sit here and think about it. But I think I would prefer, if we were going to do that, I think right now, tonight, I would recommend that we think about a general bylaw. But I could be persuaded to go the zoning bylaw way with some thought. So, yeah. So what, I'm not sure what you're talking about, reducing the speed limit in every thickly settled area in town?
You can define out exactly which areas that you're calling out, like specific streets or clusters of streets. And it just gives you the latitude of decreasing it from 30 down to 25.
Okay.
And then it would also change the sort of calculus based behind any determination for speed mitigation, right? So speed humps, stuff like that, because it's the 80th percentile associated with the speed limit.
Right.
So, you
Two
know,
standard deviations from the mean.
yeah. So, you know, it would have an impact potentially in terms of even like when it would be indicated to do some of those, you know, improvements. So it could have monetary actual impact to the town. I mean, we'd have to really see, but I think it at least gives us that flexibility to adopt that, because I believe from my research that, you know, you can adopt it from the state, but you have to vote to do that.
Through a home rule petition?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we can talk further about it. In all my years in government, I've always been a proponent of slowing traffic down. It saves lives.
Yeah, and especially with how much we, even as a board, bring up traffic and speed and those types of concerns, I think it makes a lot of sense. And it doesn't, also from how I've read this implemented in other places, it doesn't tie our hands with anything, because you have to vote to incorporate any of those areas specifically, exactly, right? You know, you could define the whole town as it, but that wouldn't make a lot of sense. So
no.
Yeah.
All right, I do have another question typed into the Q&A from Fran Fusco. She says, would love to see a zoning bylaw to not allow companies that could have a detrimental effect to our water resources. Too many talks of allowing companies with harsh chemicals, radiation, etc., battery near our wells. And then she makes a separate comment, bylaw on a townwide speed limit, 25 miles an hour. Nora, would the zoning bylaw?
We already have the Water Resource Protection Overlay District that requires a special permit for any hazardous materials within a water resource area. So we can take a look at that if you think there are any areas of that bylaw that need to be strengthened, but I think it's there. I think you have the full authority now. The select board, I'm sorry, the Zoning Board of Appeals grants special permits for Water Resource Protection Overlay District unless it's an flexible multiple use overlay district special permit or a university station multiple use special permit. Those are both in the hands of the planning board.
Okay. All right. I think her last comment about the 25 mile an hour speed limit was just a comment that she would like to see across town, not just in a thickly settled area. All right. Nora, do you feel?
Yeah, I think that's, I think we have direction. So I'll work on what I have and keep my fingers crossed that we get a planner soon.
Yeah. Okay. Next is draft minutes. Is that next on the list?
Yes, that's it.
it was a long one, but I had opportunity to look at it and didn't see anything that countered what I recall the meeting to be. So does anyone have any comments or edits that they'd like to see made in the draft minutes that we got? No. Okay. If somebody's ready to make a motion to accept the meeting minutes as submitted for, I don't know what date, sorry. What's the date on
October
that?
25th.
October 25th.
I move that
Entertain
we
the motion.
accept the minutes from the planning board dated October 25th, 2022 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the meeting minutes? Okay, seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Ellen,
Aye.
Kate,
Aye.
Josh,
Aye.
Phil,
Aye.
and I vote aye also. So the meeting minutes are adopted. That's it, Nora?
That's it. The next, there are two standard items that are on your agenda. One is for updates from agency and committee representatives, if anyone
right.
has any. And if not, the next one is just a general miscellaneous updates and administrative items. So under that, the only thing that I would introduce is that the Citizen Planner Training Collaborative has its fall workshop series posted on its website. That includes 10 training workshops offered in all the different areas for Massachusetts board members and private citizens who are just interested in planning, zoning, and I guess community land use. So if anyone is interested, please check out the Citizen Planner Training Collaborative's website and sign up for any training you'd like to take.
And the town will reimburse any registration costs?
They will, up to the extent of our budget. So let me know if you want to do it. I have a couple of $100 that I think
check with Nora first.
Yes, I think the lessons are somewhere $50 or $60 a piece. So we'll handle it till the money runs out. So it's important that if there's anything that you'd like to be better trained in, I encourage you to take it, and we'll find a way to pay for it.
All right. Next meeting is December 13th.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Without any other discussion in any of the matters on our agenda, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on adjournment? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Kate,
Aye.
Josh,
Aye.
Ellen,
Aye.
Phil,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Thank you
Thank
very
you
much,
all.
everyone, for your
Thank
work.
you, everyone.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy
To you
Happy
too.
Thanksgiving.
Holiday.